If you feel like your body suddenly has new rules, welcome. You're eating really well, you're moving your body, you're trying, and yet the puffiness or the belly weight, cravings, joint aches that feel like you're 80 years old, the brain fog, or the sleep drama at 3 a.m. Here is what I want you to hear right away. This is not a willpower problem. In midlife, your body is less like a calculator, think calories in, calories out like an equation, and it's more like this beautifully complex chemistry lab. And inflammation is one of the biggest levers that we can pull to make that lab run a little bit smoother. So today, I'm walking you through the best diet for perimenopause and beyond. And it's not a diet. It's an anti-inflammatory way of eating that is realistic, that is effective, and it doesn't require you to live on chia pudding and sadness for the rest of your life. If you're new here, hi, my name is Christy and I'm a women's health coach. I help women who are 40 plus navigate perimenopause and beyond with food, lifestyle, and simple habits that actually fit real life. I also share a ton of my recipes on my blog. They are hormone friendly, and I refuse to believe that midlife eating has to be boring or complicated, and I truly do love to cook, so there's a ton of resources over there at christyslovestory.com. This video is for you if you're 40 plus and you just feel like you're a bit puffy or you're off, or maybe you actually know that you're inflamed. Maybe your weight has changed even though your habits haven't, and you're dealing maybe with some sleep issues, cravings, mood swings, brain fog, joint pain, all indications that there might be some inflammation humming in the background. And maybe you keep hearing, cut those carbs, eat less, do more cardio, and your soul is quietly leaving your body. So just a quick note, I am not your doctor. This is educational, not medical advice. If you have a medical condition or require medication, or you have complex symptoms, please loop in your healthcare provider. But for most women, that inflammation conversation is the missing piece, and you can absolutely start here. So, all right, let's dive into it. Let's talk about what anti-inflammatory actually means in the menopause transition and how to implement it without making your life a full-time wellness project. Inflammation gets a bad reputation because we only talk about it when it's chronic. Acute inflammation is normal. That is when you say cut yourself and your body responds, and it's perfect. Chronic inflammation is the problem. That is when low-grade, constant background heat in your body that shows up as belly fat that won't budge, or perhaps it's aches and pains, headaches, maybe it's digestive issues like bloating or fatigue that feels like super personal. It can show up like skin flare-ups or intense cravings. Oh gosh, what else? It can show up like your mood. It can show up as your mood disorders. And yes, it can also make insulin your response to insulin less sensitive, which will lead to more visceral fat. And that's very likely in midlife. So why does this matter more in perimenopause and menopause? Well, because hormone shifts can change how you handle your blood sugar, how you recover from stress, how you sleep and the rest you get, how your gut functions, and how much muscle you carry. And those things influence inflammation like a stack of dominoes. So if you're trying to be in a calorie deficit, or if you're trying to calorie deficit your way out of a hormonal transition, it can feel like you're pushing a shopping cart with one wheel in the snow uphill. Technically, it's possible, but emotionally, it's quite violent. Anti-inflammatory eating is about calming that system so that your body can do what it knows how to do and regulate your appetite, your energy, and your weight. There's no magical one best diet for every single woman in menopause, but there is a best direction. What we want to be looking at is stabilizing the blood sugar. We want to be supporting your gut health. We need to make sure that we are lowering that stress load, and we can use food to do that. We want to increase our protein and fiber for sure. I'm sure you've heard that, and reduce the ultra processed foods in our diet. And these are all things that I teach as a framework, not as a strict like food religion. I like to say if it grew from the ground or had a mother, it's a green light food 80% of the time. And then there's 20% of the time for a bit of wiggle room. So if you want a simple way to think about it, anti-inflammatory eating is most about what you add and not really about what you ban. We're building meals that send your body a message of safety, of steadiness, and of nourishment. So I want to get to this is the approach that I use with my clients, and you can start this today. So, step one is we want to look at building an anti-inflammatory plate, and this is such an easy win. So, for every meal, we're going to aim for a few things. One is protein. First and foremost, protein is anti-inflammatory in the sense that it can stabilize your blood sugar. It helps to reduce those cravings. It also supports your muscle, and muscle is metabolic insurance in this stage in life. And also, that protein will help you feel satisfied longer. A simple target for most women is 25 to 35 grams per meal. Obviously, you need to adjust this to your body and your activity and your goals, but a 25 to 35 gram of protein, source of protein is about the size of your palm and the thickness of your palm. So that's an easy way to kind of gauge it on your plate. The size and thickness of your palm should give you between 25 and 35 grams of protein. And okay, so what are those protein options? Here are a few easy ones. Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, those are dairy sources. Eggs and egg whites are fantastic. Obviously, you probably are familiar with chicken and turkey and beef, salmon, sardines, tuna, fish is great. For the non meat eaters, we could do tofu, tempeh, edamame. Edamame is amazing. It's like the new cottage cheese. It's so full of fiber, so full of protein. It's fantastic. Lentils and beans. So there's a lot of fiber in lentils and beans, and we're going to get into those fiber heroes later, but lentils and beans also carry protein. And then, of course, protein powder. If it helps you hit your target, protein, there's nothing wrong with protein powder. If you only do one thing from this video, I want you to stop like snack lunching on random little bits with no protein anchor. That's how you end up hangry and cranky and feel feral at 4 p.m. Okay, so the next part of this build your plate is the fiber piece. Fiber daily and deliberately. Fiber feeds your gut and it supports your estrogen metabolism and helps blood sugar stay steady. So in my program, I have this method. It's the 30-30-30 method. We do 30 grams of protein at every meal. We do 30 grams of fiber every day, and we do 30 minutes of movement. The 30 grams of fiber every day is a great target. And most people are living at like 10 to 12 grams every day. So don't panic. Just start to climb the ladder slowly and gradually. Easy fiber sources in your diet are things like berries. I love berries. Apples and pears with the skin on. An avocado is a fantastic source of fiber. Chia, hemp, and flax seed. I put a mixture of those seeds on every single breakfast I have, and they're fantastic. Oats are a great source of fiber also. I already mentioned beans and lentils. They have fiber in them and a little bit of protein too. Don't forget leafy greens. Leafy greens are an excellent thing to add into your diet, as well as cruciferous vegetables. So those are things like broccoli and cauliflower and cabbage. And then finally, things like quinoa and brown rice and whole grains. Whole grains typically have gluten, which I don't recommend in my program because it can be inflammatory for a short time, but you do you. See how you go. The third part of my build your plate is to look at color and plants, okay? So this is not just like you need to live on salad kind of way. But plants do bring antioxidants and polyphenols into your diet. And they're basically like these little anti-inflammatory little sweepers helping you out, helping clean you out of that inflammation. And you don't need to make recipes that have 25 ingredients. You just need consistency. And there's nothing wrong with frozen berries. They count. Or bagged veggies count. A veggie tray counts. Roasted frozen broccoli counts. All of it counts. And then the final thing on the on your build the plate template would be to add in those healthy fats. Healthy fats are so key to help hormones. They help with satiety, that feeling of fullness, and they also help with inflammation regulation. So healthy fats would include things like extra virgin olive oil, things like avocado. Again, avocados are such fantastic foods for so many reasons. Nuts and seeds. I love nuts and seeds. Fatty fish, things like salmon, sardines if you like sardines, and olives all have that good healthy fat. So this would create your plate by default. So you're not locked in. There's lots of wiggle room. Okay, so step one was build the plate. Step two is to reduce the big inflammatory drivers without being, weird at parties. Okay, so the main things that reliably raise inflammation for a lot of women in midlife. This probably is no news to you, but ultra processed foods. Not because they're morally bad, although let's be real, they're not designed, well, they didn't come out of the ground or they didn't have mother. And because they're designed to be hyper palatable, they are low fiber, they're easy to overeat while messing with your blood sugar. They're really something that we try and avoid. So to swap some of those out, instead of having chips, maybe have popcorn instead. And combine that protein with a little bit of protein. So maybe you could create like a little savory Greek yogurt dip or have it with a turkey roll up. If you love sweet treats at night, frozen Greek yogurt is delicious. You can make it into a bark, you could make a protein pudding, or another thing I like to do is to take little rounds of a banana and freeze them and then dip them in chocolate and then refreeze. You can even add a little dollop of nut butter on those, and they really satisfy. I really love them. Also, added sugar. Added sugar spiking throughout the day is a real problem when it comes to managing inflammation. We got to address sugar. Sugar is highly inflammatory. Um, and we know that it's constantly spiking our insulin, which we don't want, especially if we're struggling with added belly fat. So we want to make sure that we are mindful of our sugar intake, and really sugar is in so many things. So just be mindful. If you love a sweet coffee drink, maybe you could do a bit more of a coffee with a bit of protein milk and a dash of cinnamon. Cinnamon is great for balancing your blood sugar. If you love dessert, maybe you only take dessert if you've already had a very balanced meal instead of having it alone, because that's going to really skyrocket that insulin response. And another source that we need to be mindful of when it comes to inflammation is alcohol, excess alcohol. Alcohol can increase inflammation and totally disrupt your sleep, which then affects your hunger hormones and cravings and stress, and it creates this vicious cycle. And I'm not saying never drink. I enjoy a glass of wine from time to time. I'm just saying that if you are going to enjoy a glass of wine, be super mindful about it. Try and reduce your intake, try and have water and food while you eat, while you drink, and try and enjoy your alcohol earlier in the evening. And that way, your sleep will hopefully not be as impacted. You'll know right away if your sleep is impacted. Your sleep never lies, and we don't want you to have poor sleep, because poor sleep is another driver of inflammation, of course, as well as chronic stress. So it's not food, but it does matter. Poor sleep sends your body into a stress response. And because your body feels like it's under stress, it'll behave like it's preparing for winter or preparing for a famine. And even if you're just responding to emails, it's that stress response is the same. So your nervous system is if your nervous system is constantly activated, inflammation will be high as well. We need to make sure that the body feels safe in order to release that inflammation. So anti-inflammatory eating also includes eating regularly, so not depriving yourself, not under eating. I want to make sure that you're eating enough calories, enough protein, and not accidentally starving all day. Okay, let's make this super practical so that you can actually implement this and start to feel results right away. Okay, let's look at breakfast first. Breakfast swaps that we can consider. If you are currently doing sugary breakfast cereal, let's try Greek yogurt with berries. Let's sprinkle on some chia seeds and a nice grain-free granola. That's so delicious. So that's a nice swap for the sugary cereal. If your go-to is to grab a bagel alone with maybe some butter on it, how about you take that bagel with eggs and fruit? So then you've added in the protein, you've got a little bit of nutrients from the fruit. We'll talk about gluten again in another time. Maybe your go-to is just toast and jam. Instead, can you do toast with a smear of cottage cheese on it, some berries, or maybe an egg with avocado on the side? So those are other options that will create a more balanced plate instead of just that high sugar breakfast that's just going to hit that insulin spike, which will only lead to a dip later in the morning. Let's think of some lunch swaps that we could try. So if your go-to is to have a salad, but it's sort of a bit dry, there's nothing really satisfying about it. Instead, let's grab those salad greens, let's throw on some chicken, some salmon, some tofu. Let's sprinkle in some quinoa or some beans and make sure that you've got a nice rich dressing with some olive oil. That would be lovely. Or if lunch is not your thing, again, we don't want to go too long without eating because that blood sugar drop is going to trigger a stress response, which is going to increase your inflammation. So let's make sure that maybe you could grab a turkey sandwich on whole grain bread. Maybe you can get some cut up veggies and fruit on the side. And if you must hit the drive-through, go for a bunless burger. Or see if there's a side salad that you could add in there, or a grilled option instead of the deep fried. And then instead of a soda or a fountain drink, grab water. Grab water. Those are great, easy swaps. And even if you did that like twice a week, that would be so much better than that would be such a great step in the right direction. For dinner swaps, okay, so if you really enjoy pasta, who doesn't? But you don't mix that pasta with some sort of protein. Instead, we're going to make sure that every time we have pasta, there's a shrimp, there's a chicken, there's ground beef, there's some sort of lean protein in that dish. Also, stir through spinach, baby spinach. It'll wilt in the heat of the pasta. You could probably get like a whole clamshell of pasta of spinach in there. It's brilliant. And then you know you're getting so much fiber with that pasta and the protein. Chef's kiss. Drizzle on some olive oil, maybe some lemon, and you've got yourself a delicious dinner. If taco night is something that you do every week, then how about we do a taco salad bowl with lots of beans and chopped up leafy greens. You could add in meat, some guacamole. I think that's perfect. Also, pizza night. Who doesn't love a fabulous pizza night? Even if it's frozen pizza, you could pair that with a nice big salad and make sure that that pizza had some protein on it. You could even add chicken on the salad or on the pizza. No shame. We're just looking for balance. And I've got tons of snack alternatives on my site. But if you are getting kind of cranky and hungry by 3 p.m., and no judgment, it's happening to so many women, let's make sure that we're snacking smart when that blood sugar drops at 3 p.m. So granola, instead of just having a granola bar, let's look for a bar that has a decent amount of protein with a low amount of sugar. Or do that Greek yogurt parfait. That's a great, satisfying, filling option for 3 p.m. If you regularly reach for crackers and cheese, maybe instead you grab a couple crackers with one of those tuna packets, or maybe you can get a cottage cheese packet or some turkey slices. That's a great option as well. And no issue there, fruit's fabulous, but just make sure maybe you have them with a bit of nuts or cheese at the same time. Things that I think are really quietly powerful for the pantry is to go through and say, okay, instead of using vegetable oil, replace that with olive oil or avocado oil. If you have a lot of sugary sauces in your pantry, have a look and see if you can replace those with some pestos or some salsas. Hummus is a great alternative, or just get some plain Greek yogurt and you can create your own delicious dips with that as a base. If you're having white rice every night, which there's nothing wrong with rice, but maybe rotate that with a little bit of quinoa or brown rice or potatoes. Don't worry, potatoes are totally fine. There's nothing wrong with a nice, healthy carb that came from the earth, especially at night. When your kitchen is stocked, your future self has fewer meltdowns. And we have enough decisions to make in the course of the day. So do yourself a favor and just understand what it is that might be triggering that inflammation and set yourself up for success. When I'm at the grocery store, I often buy the same things over and over again. My protein staples are things like eggs and Greek yogurt. I always have chicken thighs or breasts. I love ground turkey. Salmon is something that's in my weekly rotation. I also loved canned tuna. I'm not a huge fan of canned salmon or sardines, but if that's your thing, then those are so great. Also tofu. I have some amazing tofu recipes on my site. So if you are a fan of tofu, then that's great too. And then of course, protein powder. There's nothing wrong My fiber staples when I'm at the grocery store are things like oats, chia and flax seeds, berries, so many berries. And frozen is perfectly fine. They're often less expensive, and you can just defrost them in the fridge overnight if you want to have them on your yogurt, or you can eat them, throw them in the microwave and soften them a little bit. They get nice and soft and sweet. They're delicious. Apples and pears, fantastic. Lentils and beans, these are great because you can buy them in cans. Leafy greens again, I always buy a couple clamshells of leafy greens, and I mentioned already the broccoli and cauliflower. Those are great sources of great sources of fiber. And then finally, when you want a little extra flavor, let's look for things like olive oil and lemons. Garlic is fantastic. Spices like turmeric and cinnamon and ginger. Any kind of vinegar, so great. Any mustards, also great, and salsas. So if you struggle with consistency, don't buy 47 ingredients and think that you're going to implement them all. Just go for the ones that you know that you are familiar with and that you enjoy, and start to integrate them into your diet, replacing some of the ones that had a lot of sugar or inflammatory ingredients. And just buy the basics and repeat meals on purpose. Variety is overrated when you're trying to feel better. You need to take the mental load away. Okay, let's see if we can put this into a realistic starter plan. Oh, my dog. Let's see if we can put this into a realistic starter plan. My dog is making a noise. If you want a clean start, here's a really simple approach. For the next 7 days, write this down. Protein at every meal. 2 fists of plants a day as a minimum. That's going to help us with our fiber intake, not to mention getting all those polyphenols and anti-inflammatory ingredients. One high fiber booster daily. So that is things like chia, beans, lentil, oats, or berries. Those will really help up that intake of fiber, which is so critical at this stage in life. I also want you to be hydrating, and I'll put all of this in the description below so you don't forget. Hydration, even adding electrolytes. If you're active or prone to headaches, hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Let's do a little alcohol experiment. Let's reduce or pause the amount of alcohol you're drinking for this week and see how you feel. See what changes. And then the final thing is to take a 10-minute walk after one meal. This is blood sugar magic. If everybody did this, there would be so much less concern about midlife belly weight. I would recommend, if you can, after dinner. That's so key. And that's it. It doesn't have to be perfect, just consistent. So I have a lot of recipes on my blog that fit this style of eating. So if you want meal ideas that don't taste like punishment, I've got you. I've got that link in the description below. I really want you to hear that you don't need extreme restriction in order to improve the inflammation in your body. You simply need stability. You need stable meals, you need stable blood sugar, you need stable sleep habits, you need stable movement, and stable hydration. Inflammation often improves when your body feels safe and supported, and not when you punish it into compliance. Here are some common mistakes that I often see with the women I work with. So let's do some quick troubleshooting so that we can prevent these classic face plants. First one is going too low calorie. In midlife, under eating can backfire via that stress hormone response and contributing to cravings. So we want to make sure that we're eating enough. The other thing I see is only focusing on clean eating, but ignoring that protein piece. So you can eat so healthy and still be under-proteined and under-fueled and hungry. The other thing that high achieving women often do is just trying to change everything all at once. I want you instead to just pick 2 levers for 2 weeks. Pick 2 things that you want to commit to for 2 weeks. That's how new habits stick. You know, it doesn't have to be perfection or nothing. If you are 80% consistent, you're winning. Your body likes patterns. It doesn't like purity. So if you take one thing from this video, let it be this. The best diet for perimenopause and menopause is the one that reduces inflammation by creating steadiness. So we are looking for protein, we're looking for fiber, we want lots of plants, we want healthy fats, and we want a lot fewer ultra-processed inputs most of the time. If you want, I can share my exact anti-inflammatory meal structure that I use with my clients, plus easy swaps and recipe links. So leave a comment with the word plan, and I'll tell you where to start. And if this video felt like someone finally explained what's been happening in your body, please subscribe. I would love to have you with us as I post weekly for hormone-friendly nutrition, lifestyle strategies for women who are living real